Hi everyone and welcome back to the Tasting Room. I just got back from a fantastic vacation over in Scotland. If you've never been there, it's a beautiful country, lots and lots of rolling hills and mountains, very green, just beautiful. We were over in the Highlands. We flew into Glasgow and kind of worked our way up to the Isle of Skye, over Portree. Then shot over to the city of Tain, Stirling. Yeah, it was a beautiful trip. We hit a couple of castles, hit some distilleries along the way. Obviously, you know. First one we stopped at was the Talisker Distillery, actually. Okay tour. It was our first one, so. Got to learn a little bit about how Talisker makes their whiskey, and at the end we got to sample their Talisker Storm. I had that one before. It's not too hard to find out here by us in the States, but it is a little smoky for that region actually. As you know, a lot of your smokier whiskeys are coming from out west, the Isle of Islay, but so this one's a little bit strange. The way they get the smokier flavor into the Scotch is when they're drying the barley. After the germination process, they take the peat moss and they burn it in the kiln underneath where they're drying the barley. And usually about day one, when it's still a little bit moist, that's when it absorbs that flavor of the smoke. And they use probably more peat than most of the other distilleries do in the region. So that was okay. A little disappointed we didn't get to sample a little bit more at their distillery. They did let us try a couple of different ones before we bought it. You know, if we asked for them in the over in the gift shop. The one I brought back with me is one I'm not sure if I can get it out here or not. It hadn't caught my eye as something that I had seen before out here. This is the Portree. It's finished in port casks. So. A little bit of sweet to complement the little bit of extra smoke. So excited about reviewing this one. Only gave me like half a thimbleful to try at the distillery, so you know, who knows. So that one was over on the Isle of Skye. The next one the next distillery we visited was the Glenmorangie Distillery. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing that wrong. The Glenmorangie Distillery. That's how they pronounce it there, so that's how we'll pronounce it from now on. Glenmorangie. Anyway, they had a fair tour there. I did learn that they were one of the few that actually they don't rechar their barrels. You know, a lot of you know, obviously for a Scotch whiskey, they're not using, you know, they're typically not using brand new casks. You know, it has to be matured in an oak cask. Doesn't matter where the oak comes from, but they typically don't use a brand new one. A lot of most of these places are using ex-bourbon casks, you know, American white oak, that have been used once before. Because obviously, as you know from watching my channel, a bourbon barrel can only be used once for bourbon, because bourbon has to be aged in a new white oak barrel. So most of them ship them off to Scotland to be to age Scotch whiskey. Also, obviously, things that they use are port casks and sherry butts. But typically, what these distilleries will do is they'll then rechar the barrel. Kind of livens up the wood, gives it a little bit more flavor, a little bit deeper color to the whiskey. But the Glenmorangie Distillery, they actually do not rechar their barrels, because what they're looking for is they're looking to absorb the flavor from that bourbon. They want as much of the flavor from that bourbon as possible. So, yeah, it's a fun fact. It's the only one I've found that they told me that they did not rechar their barrels. I'm sure they're not the only ones, but I thought it was unique. Anyway, after the tasting, we just got to sample their flagship, I think. Just their original. Yeah, I've had that one before. It's a nice table whiskey. You know, not a ton of flavor. You get a little bit of orange. That's their you know, adds a fair flavor profile, but it's a little bit on the lighter side. But anyway, after the tasting, I walked up to the little bar area. I asked the gentleman standing there if they had anything that they didn't export to the U.S. And he actually had a number of them. He let me try a few of them. A couple were a little out of my price range, especially seeing as how this was the second distillery I'd been to over in Scotland, and I didn't know if it was going to keep getting pricier from there. And I didn't want to go home and have to live off bologna for a month. But anyway, I decided on one I didn't actually try at the distillery, but he was talking it up quite nicely. This is the Duthak. This is a 1 liter bottle here. But it tells me this one is very hard to find outside of the distillery, so I figured, what the hell, this one is finished in Pedro Jimenez and virgin oak casks. A whiskey fit for a king. Anyway, so I'm definitely looking forward to trying this one out. Another distillery that we went to was the Cardhu Distillery. Now I had read online that this was the, supposedly one of the best tours, so obviously I couldn't pass that up. It was a pretty comprehensive tour of their distillery. The thing that really stood out to me about their tour was the tasting afterwards, though. They gave you they set up 7 of their bottles in front of you. Of course, I've never had most of them. Anything other than their flagship, really. And they told you a little bit about the tasting notes that you would find in each one of them. And they gave you 3 blue whiskey nosing glasses. Now, the blue was so you couldn't see the color and try to guess which one, because you were supposed to guess which whiskey you were drinking from the notes that you were getting. Anyway, what I found was they had a lot of sweeter whiskeys. I think they tend to use the sherry casks a lot. But of course, the one that stood out to me was a little. Some of the notes were a little bit tropical almost, and of course, I couldn't pass this one up. This was the limited edition, available only at the distillery. So the others I assume I can find somewhere, but this one I'm sure I can't. This is one of only 1,800 bottles. Like I said, only available at the distillery, so very cool. So we also visited the Glenlivet Distillery, of course, while we were cruising around the Speyside region. Their facility was actually down for maintenance. All these distilleries, they come down for a couple of weeks to clean the copper pot stills and refinish them, and obviously do some general maintenance in the facility. So we were unfortunate in that we visited during that time, but they still took us around, showed us the facility. They have an enormous mash tun over there. Took us out to the warehouses, and anyway, while we were in their warehouse, she let us, the tour guide let us sample a sherry cask whiskey right from the barrel. So obviously that's it's a unique experience. She used this long copper tube. She called it a copper dog, and I guess what they would, back, I think the security is a little tighter now than it was before, but way back, they had 2 guys working in the warehouse. One guy would tell the other guy, "Hey, I'm gonna go walk the dog," and he'd have this copper tube down his pant leg or something, and he would. The one guy was supposed to go, keep watch for the, for the owner or whatever, the manager or whatever, and the other guy would take his little copper tube and he would open up the bunghole and go steal himself some whiskey. Anyway, that's what she used to get the whiskey out of the barrel. They were selling these little copper dogs for like $115 though was a little ridiculous, but whatever. Anyway, so after the tour, so obviously we got to sample that the cherry cask whiskey on the tour, and then afterwards we got to sample their 15-year-old and their 18-year-old whiskey. The Glenlivet didn't have anything that they would that they considered, you know, a distillery only that I saw anyway. But they did have a couple that I found that were unique. It's the Distillery Reserve Collection. So I'm not sure if they ship these around or not. But this one here was aged 13 years. It's a single cask. Put into the cask the 27th of November 2003, bottled on the 9th of May 2017. So this one was, this is bottled at cask strength, so it's not diluted with water. It is 61.9% alcohol. Anyway, most of the distillery tours we went on, you know, they all charge you something. Most of them were about 10-12 pounds, so I don't know, you know, 15-20 bucks for a tour. Yeah, which included a tasting. The you know, of course, you know, my favorite whiskeys of all time come from the Balvenie distillery. So, you know, I couldn't go to that region of Scotland without visiting the Balvenie, right? Their tour was 40 pounds. So, you know, figure upwards of 50 bucks. For the tour. So, you know, I'm wondering, you know, I wonder what's going to be unique about this tour that they're charging this much extra money. Well, let me tell you, if you're ever in that region, worth every penny. Every penny. So it was, most of the tours out there were about, you know, 30 to 45 minutes long. This one was 3 hours. 3 hours long, this tour. And they limited it to a group of 8 people. So, so we had a full group of 8 people, and just I don't remember the host's name. I have his business card. The guy that gave us the tour, but just a great guy, very laid back. And the Balvenie was actually the only distillery that I visited that allowed you to take, you know, pictures and video inside the distillery. So I got to take, you know, most of these places, once you get out of the gift shop, they don't want you taking any pictures, any video. You know, they say it's because of the alcohol vapors, which, I mean, come on, the process for making scotch and for making bourbon is essentially the same. You're using a different grain, but that's about it. I mean, you know, and in Kentucky didn't have any problem with me taking all kinds of pictures inside their distilleries. So it was kind of strange. But the Balvenie, they didn't care anywhere outside of the warehouse. You know, they didn't want you taking any pictures in the warehouse, but everywhere else in the distillery was fine. So yeah, so that was fine. Anyway, our guide took us through, you know, where they store all their barley. They still use the traditional malting floors, which I love. You know, they're one of the only distilleries in Scotland that still malts their own barley, and I love that they keep it old school like that. They were just coming off of a maintenance period, so they didn't have anything on the malting floor. But fortunately, they did have. You know, they did have some mashes fermenting, so, you know, we got to see a little bit of that. We got to taste a little bit. You know, since they didn't have anything malting, they didn't have anything drying, so we actually got to walk inside their drying kiln. That was unique. And then went over to their famed Warehouse 24, where I actually got to bottle my own whiskey. So we tasted a couple right from the cask, and got to bottle my own. So they had a couple that were available to try. They had a 14-year-old second fill that originally held Jack Daniel's whiskey. And they had a 13-year-old first fill cask that originally held bourbon. So that's the one that That's the one I went with. Now, it tasted a little bit better to me. I like the first fill. It's very nice. Cask number 2022. Strength is about 61.7%. Of course, you know, we didn't dilute this. This went right from the cask into my bottle here. Bottled by me. I love it. Very unique experience. They also had a sherry butt there, but unfortunately some bonehead had dropped a bottle inside, and I couldn't tell if it was broken or not, so they can't use that cask. So that was unfortunate. But their tasting, you know, after we left the warehouse, we went over to the tasting room, and that was beyond anything. So they let us sample the their Ton 159, which was a little bit unique. In that warehouse 24 there's this big giant vat, this big ton, where their master blender will take, I think it's 31 barrels, 31 different barrels, ages, don't crucify me, I think it's ages 21 to 42-ish, these different barrels, and he marries them all together to make this unique flavor profile that he's going for his Ton 159 whiskey. So we get to sample that. That was very cool. That's the only one actually that came from a bottle that I hadn't had before. The other ones were the 21-year Portwood, which is just an awesome whiskey. The 14-year Caribbean cask, that's the one that previously had held rum. And the 12-year Doublewood, which has always been a staple of mine. The fifth one they had us sample was, we drew it right from the cask in that Warehouse 24. It was their members only cask, so of course I had to ask, well, how do I become a member? He said, oh, we could just fill out this little card. Okay, no problem, right? Put in the cask in 1974. This was a 43-year-old whiskey. Unquestionably the greatest thing that has ever touched my lips. Just unbelievable. Right from the cask into one of these little bottles, into my tasting glass, and my God, just phenomenal. The final distillery we visit, not that we visited, but the final distillery that I actually made a purchase at was the Dalwhinnie. I didn't do a tour of Dalwhinnie. We just did the tasting, and they give you six. Was it six? Yeah, it was six decent samples. The first three were it was really nothing too special about. The next ones were they were kind of getting up there in age, and had a unique flavor profile. They had one, of course. This was one of only 6,000 bottles, limited edition, available only at the distillery. So yeah, call me a tourist, but couldn't pass that up. Take it out of its little bag here and show you the bottle. Nice deep amber color there. I love it. 48% alcohol. Very nice. Anyway, that's all the whiskey that I bought over there. You know, not all the souvenirs that I got, but sheep everywhere in Scotland. So of course I got a couple of lamb's wool scarves. Why not? You know, I had to get one that would go with my, I went to Scotland. I bought a kilt. Why not, right? You only live once. Anyway, that was my haul from Scotland. You know, I hope you enjoyed hearing about my trip. You know, stay tuned. In the weeks to come, we'll sample some of these wonderful, wonderful whiskeys that you can't get anywhere else. You know, maybe it'll inspire you to take a trip to Scotland yourself and pick up some of these wonderful whiskeys. But anyway, thank you for watching. I hope I didn't get too long-winded. You know, I really enjoyed this trip. You know, I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I hope you continue to watch me right here on The Tasting Room.